Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bill Cheslock. I'm the Director of Emerging Products over here at Lightpath, and we're going to spend the next half an hour talking about denial of service attacks and why it's important to have a robust defense against these types of attacks. A bit of house cleaning before we start. You'll notice in the upper right of your Windows, there's a Docs tab, DOCS, Docs. And that's useful. There's a couple of documents there you might like to download to get some more information. The second thing is the Q&A tab. While you can't speak back to me, you can submit questions in there, and I'll try to keep an eye on it as I'm going through the presentation to answer the questions as real time as I can. There were some questions asked before today, and as I get to them, I'll copy it. Otherwise, again, afterwards, we could just send out responses to the questions, okay? So we'll start the discussion talking a little bit about why is defense against distributed denial of service, I'm going to use the term DDoS, so important. Primarily because they're growing. They're more significant in terms of sophistication, frequency, and their effect that they're having on any company that they choose to attack that has an internet presence. Remember, the idea of a denial of service attack is simply to deny your systems from properly operating and properly responding to legitimate clients. And when that happens, you could appear to be offline, you could have reputation damage, you could have business damage. So the idea is maintain a protection of DDoS along with all of your other cybersecurity protections. The attacks are morphing. Hackers are getting more sophisticated in how they attack distributed denial of service attacks. And they're going against a variety of targets. So you'll see in a chart where it's not just one industry that's vulnerable. There are many industries. There is an amount of increased regulation because governments are realizing that they need reliable access to resources as more and more resources become available on the internet. So there's now more regulatory requirements. And in the realm of patching and bugs, there's constantly little gaps in application servers, web servers, data servers that become exposed. And that's what the hackers look for. And that's where they try to affect their attacks. And that's why you need a robust and ever updating protection against these types of attacks. A few statistics, certainly, like I mentioned, they are getting more frequent and they are on the rise and they're getting more costly. I think a good 30% of companies have reported attacks. And these costs, the $6,000 per minute, it actually is in line with an estimate from about 4 years ago that said DDoS attacks could cost approximately $6,000 a minute. So again, it goes to how often you need access to the internet, how long you're offline, and the cost, not only direct cost to loss of business, but reputational damage, as well as possibly technical damage if you have to reboot servers. And sometimes when servers don't get managed in a while, when they get rebooted, they don't come right back up. So there are many initial and then sidebar effects of DDoS attacks that have disrupted more and more businesses each and every year. A significant evolution of DDoS attacks is that they are no longer just volumetric in nature. It's not that the hackers are throwing millions of packets and bits per second at your internet interface. They're starting to attack applications, more sophisticated types of attacks. So they're going against the web servers, they're going against the database servers, and they're trying to bog them down or make them inaccessible by using more sophisticated techniques. So not only do we talk about in terms of volumetric or bits per second, but we start to talk more and more about connections per second and how these attackers are starting to bog down your application servers more than just they've been doing in the past. These statistics come from our partner, and you could see that while the government vertical seems to be the most targeted vertical for DDoS attacks, it spans almost every industry out there. And the reason this is true is because DDoS attacks are relatively simple to execute. They're becoming more prolific in terms of their availability. It's not just gamers anymore looking to attack their competitors in video games, but also they're looking to take offline resources that more and more organizations are depending upon, because more and more are available via the internet. So the key here is, how can you implement a solution to DDoS that allows the good traffic through, but protects against the ever-growing and vast array of DDoS attacks that are coming, both volumetric and application specific. Lightpath just went through an effort to renew our DDoS product. So we now have a more robust product, we call it DDoS Shield, than we've had in the past. And the reason we did this was because we needed to have an improved protection against the ever-growing threat and the various types of attacks that are happening. Historically, we focused on volumetric type attacks, where we were just protecting against bulk attacks, against a port, against an IP address or a port. But as attacks have gotten more sophisticated, as for example, they might attack multiple IP addresses in a subnet, or they may attack a server, a particular web server, we needed more defenses against those types of attacks. And that's what DDoS Shield now provides. We continue to maintain this high level of service because we believe there's a value to you as customers to have not only your DIA, your internet access provided by Lightpath, but also to have your DDoS protection provided by Lightpath. This way you have the singular reliable service, as well as a single point of contact, both for billing and support issues and deployment issues. Quick question came in about the government vertical. And what does that include? It's both municipalities and government agencies. I see a question about the cost for K-12. I'll defer all cost questions to your account executive. You can get in touch with your account exec and they could talk about the various costs and products that we have that include the DDoS Shield protection. Okay. Customer portal is big because one of the comments we've received in the past is that our customers had no visibility at any given time into how their internet connection is working. So now with DDoS Shield, we have a customer portal. So that allows you to get real-time access into your internet service to not only see what traffic is happening, but also to see if any attacks have happened. This visibility is all both real-time, as well as you can get reporting. So you could get information from historical purposes on what's been happening in terms of your internet connection. Okay. In terms of the product DDoS Shield, it's a fully integrated solution. So what that means is it's integrated into the Lightpath core network. So the scrubbers and the flow detection happens inside of our network. So it's our DIA circuits that we're protecting, and it's all traffic coming in to ultimately you. So the traffic will be intercepted before it gets to your edge of the network. And that's important because some people have said, well, my firewall will do DDoS protection. The problem is, if the bad packets already make it to the interface of your firewall, then your firewall is already going to be bogged down. So it's not as effective a solution as one that could actually prevent the DDoS attack from even getting to your firewall. So that's the value added of DDoS Shield. In terms of the technology, One of the major benefits that we have is in our ability to use behavioral or machine learning techniques to protect against the various types of attacks that are happening. So not only is our solution, not only does it include signature-based protection, but it also includes behavioral based detection, so that zero-day attacks can start to be thwarted and cleaned from your internet traffic. And I mentioned earlier, Lightpath has a strong reputation of white glove service and support and reliability. So getting this type of protection along with the DIA is your best solution to having a reliable and consistent user experience. I mentioned the idea of having Lightpath, having it integrated into our core. There are other products out there that provide DDoS protection. The main factor there is the traffic that's headed to you has to be routed over to that other service. So there's an inherent latency that you're going to experience that you wouldn't otherwise experience by getting a product right from Lightpath. And in terms of the support, it's a fully managed service. So Lightpath is providing the cybersecurity expertise and the transport expertise. So you don't have to worry about having this type of protection, tuning it, reacting to attacks. We take care of all of that through our automation and through our expertise. So we're really offloading your requirement to maintain an awareness of what's going on. Again, with the portal, you would have the ability to go into that portal at any time and see what's happening on your circuit and get information related to attacks that have or haven't happened. The next chart talks a little bit about the features. And what I wanted to highlight here is that there are two products that are offered, two tiers of DDoS Shield. One is called Plus and one is called Premier. And we did that because we realized there are different requirements out there and different price points out there. So depending on what you need, you could buy the product that's right for you. Not to go through all of these features, but I think it's important to recognize that the first one talks about volumetric. That's historically been how DDoS attacks occur, is just volume. But as the smarter, more advanced attacks have come in against web servers, DNS servers, you'll see the reference to low and slow. The idea that it's a denial of service attack, but it's not volumetric. It's trickling in maybe a couple of connections per second that ultimately bog down your server. Maybe it's the sync act taking advantage of the TCP protocol to open up connections on your server and never closing them. All of those advanced types of attacks can now be thwarted through DDoS Shield. So that's the value of this chart. You get to see not only the protections from DDoS Plus, but also Premier. And in Premier, what you're seeing is a lot more of the more sophisticated types of attacks that someone might experience. This chart talks a little bit about the customer portal, because a big demand was, how can our customers see what's going on anytime they want to, even if an attack is not happening? So with the customer portal, you can get information both in peacetime and attack time. And you can see what's happening on your circuit in terms of the type of traffic that's going through, if there were any attacks. If you have multiple protected objects, you could see how each one of them is behaving. And again, it's through a web portal, so it's anytime or anywhere you can get this information. I see a question came in. If you guys are blocking attacks at the core root level, why does this come with a cost to the customer? Shouldn't this be part of an SLA? So the answer is, we do protect our core network. Yes, we protect the Lightpath core against DDoS attacks. But what we found is that there is not always a requirement. There are people who choose, and they have a risk portfolio, and they choose not to get this protection. Or they rely on their, like I mentioned earlier, they will rely on their firewall to allow that, to provide that type of protection. So we're offering this service above our typical DIA service, for customers who are interested in having this level of protection. In terms of why it's not built into all DIAs, that would get into a business case analysis. We have plenty of business in DIA where cost is a major factor, and if a company has a desire to get their DIA and their DDoS protection in another manner, we have to be open to that idea. Okay. Another question came in: at what threshold can Lightpath DDoS defense get overwhelmed? What sort of stress testing has been performed? We won't talk about maximum attack sizes. That's a sensitive topic. But what we can say is that we do test our internet connectivity to a multiple magnitudes of what we sell to our customers. So we can handle very, very, very large attacks on our infrastructure, and certainly any meaningful attack that would come into your infrastructure at the 1 gig, 10 gig, 20 gig level. If we do start getting to the point where we're selling many 100 gig DIAs to our customers, we will certainly scale up our infrastructure to handle the larger attacks. Okay. Okay. So that was my last chart. So I'll go back to the Q&A. We have about 10 minutes to go, so I can talk to some additional questions that have come in. How does this service compare to competitors, carriers such as Verizon, Lumen, and other security companies? These other providers do offer DDoS on competitor services. Agreed. We partner with Radware, so they're an industry, a global leader in the DDoS defense world. There are other products. Primarily, the reason you would come to Lightpath for this, as I mentioned first, is there's no additional latency that your packets would experience. If you can conceptualize, if you do use a third-party DDoS protector, then all your data will flow from its source through the internet to the third party back into Lightpath to get to you. So there's an inherent latency. And then depending on how that's configured, there are certain protections that only we can provide because we're in line, is the term I'll use, in line with the cybersecurity protection. So there are certain levels of protection that we could provide that other vendors couldn't, because the solution is integrated with our core network. Who is the ideal customer for this product? Well, the first customer that we would say is ideal is a customer who requires 7/24 availability of their internet. If your business is highly dependent on internet access to your customers, then this is a cybersecurity you should strongly consider. Secondly would be companies in regulated businesses, healthcare, education, government. There are more and more regulations being imposed upon vendors, suppliers, in order to protect their systems against cyber attacks. So if you're subject to these regulations, providing a DDoS protection is another way of showing that you're securing your network and improving your availability. There's a question that just came in. What is the implementation process? If we would like to add DDoS Shield, is this done internally or externally? DDoS Shield is done transparently to you. There is no hardware that has to go on your premise. What happens is we configure what's called a protected object, which would be your subnetwork. And we do that in our core, and then we program wherever our core meets the internet, our peering points, we program the systems there. So it's a software activation process that we will create the protected object, we will test it, we log those tests, we call that a burst certificate, we validate that the protection is working, and then we'll activate it on your DIA. So it's a relatively short process to activate it. There's no hardware involved. It's all software. And once it's activated, like I said, you have access into a portal, so you would be able to see the status. There was a question earlier before this meeting, a pre-question, which talked about a way of testing efficacy. And there's two responses I have to that question. The first is, as I just mentioned, we perform tests when we set up the protected object. So we validate that the protected object is working, that the attacks are detected, and then mitigation starts. That's one way that we validate that it works. And again, when the attack occurs and when we scrub the data, your good traffic goes through cleanly. Key factor when you consider this protection and any other protection is the amount of false positives that might occur. Using the machine learning of this solution, we minimize false positives by taking full advantage of processing and algorithms, proprietary algorithms, so that we can be aware of what's actually an attack and what's actually valid traffic, so that we don't have false positives and block your traffic that should be getting through. But there's another way you could check efficacy, and there are plenty of companies out there that will do things like pen testing or vulnerability testing. So if you are so interested in that, if you're building your security plan and you want to find out what threats you might be susceptible to, you could always go to a third party and have them test your internet, and then you would get a report on the level of vulnerabilities. Okay. I'm sorry, I used an acronym, DIA. That's a dedicated internet access. It's a term we use to define how we provide internet access to our customers. So people will get 100 meg dedicated internet access, 200 meg, a gig, 10 gig, 20 gig dedicated internet access. In terms of a question, can it be added anytime? Pretty much yes. Once the internet connection is active or concurrent with a new internet connection, we could add the DDoS Shield protection on top of that. Noteworthy, one of the notes in our frequently asked questions relates to, can you, if you get DDoS Shield, will that protect any internet connection that you have? And the answer is no. It protects the internet traffic coming across the Lightpath provided internet connection. So there are some customers who have carrier resiliency, so they'll have a Lightpath circuit and they'll have another third-party circuit. This protection only protects the traffic as it's coming across the Lightpath circuit. Okay, so that's important. Yes, it's true. It's only on Lightpath service. Here's a question. We are a school. How is the cost added to our existing contract? We sell a product called SecureNet. It's a different product than our DIA product, but the significance of it, especially in the education vertical, is that it's a combination of the DIA, the direct internet access circuit, and the DDoS protection in the product called SecureNet. And the reason we did that is because we know many in the education field look to take advantage of the E-rate program. And that product complies with E-rate requirements. So if you're in the education field and you have, currently you just have a pure internet connection and you're interested in getting DDoS protection on your internet connection, then speak with our sales team. You want to look at our SecureNet product. Okay, I'm looking at additional questions. There's a question about the machine learning that I made reference to. Our product includes what's called a behavioral denial of service protection. And what that does is, in addition to the signature-based protection that happens, The behavior, the machine learning protection, involves the software looking at every packet that's coming in. And when it detects that it breaches a volumetric threshold, it starts looking at those packets to see what's unique about it. So for example, if there's an unusual number of TCP requests, connections into a web server, the DDoS algorithm starts looking at those packets, and it could start to realize if there's a consistency in them that reflects an attack. That's real-time, algorithmic-based proprietary information that's unique about this solution. And the importance there is that not only will it protect against any various types of attacks, but those zero-day attacks, those attacks that have never happened before, can now be detected, and you can get the protection because the DDoS algorithm, in a matter of between 10 and 18 seconds, can figure out, okay, this is an attack. I'm going to scrub this traffic, and your internet connection maintains access into, to all your customers. So that's a feature of our solution. We call it DDoS, Behavioral Denial of Service Protection, and how it's very valuable to zero-day attacks. We're down to the last minute, so I'll take a quick look to see if there's anything additional in the questions. Okay. All right. I don't see any additional questions. I'll have to review after this, but I want to thank you for joining today. I hope I gave you some insight, not only into the growing threat of denial of service attacks and how they're getting more sophisticated, but also give you confidence that there's a very reliable and effective product that we offer, that we recently upgraded and now offer to give you the protection not only against volumetric type DDoS attacks, but also a plethora of application-based, higher level-based attacks that your servers could be subject to. Thank you.